Welcome to the Get Fit Guys, quick and dirty tips to slim down and shape up. My name is Ben Greenfield. I'm the Get Fit Guy, and in today's episode, you're going to learn about what kind of exercise makes you smarter. Now, there is an episode that I had about a year ago called An Exercise Trick to Make You Smarter. And in that episode, I introduced a compound called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, which is a protein that acts on neurons in your central nervous system and peripheral nervous system to help your existing neurons survive and thrive, and also to encourage the growth of new neurons and neuronal connections, also known as synapses. And in that post, I recommend making the BDNF flow better by fitting in an aerobic 20 to 45 minute run, bike ride, or other bout of cardio on the morning of any day in which you have high intellectual demands. Then I recently tweeted, here's why I like to go on a nice easy walk, simple nasal breathing jog or bike before a big cognitive task or speech. And in that tweet, I referenced a Runner's World article that went into some of the latest research on brain and BDNF and exercise. Well, let's dive in this episode into what these new studies have discovered, and also I'm going to give you a few quick and dirty tips on using intervals, weight training, and cardiovascular exercise to increase BDNF and to elicit a few other brain-boosting effects too. Now, in addition to knowing about BDNF for brain survival and growth, you also need to be familiar with another term, neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the ability of your brain to engage in the strengthening or weakening of existing neuronal pathways. That's called synaptic plasticity, or the establishment of entirely new neurons and connections, and that's called structural plasticity. Well, we already know that compared to strength training, aerobic training can cause a much more significant BDNF boost, likely due to the fact that BDNF stays more localized to muscle tissue in response to strength training. We also know that aerobic running can inhibit the lowering of neuroplasticity that can occur after a stroke. At the same time, strength training is not useless for cognitive function. For example, one recent study showed that strength gains, not aerobic gains, in response to training were significantly associated with cognitive improvements for exercise. But what about intense exercise that doesn't cause a big localized muscle pump that may keep BDNF in the tissue like strength training does? Well, it turns out that sprinting is a fantastic way to boost, as elite sprinters have higher levels of BDNF than amateur sprinters. And this is probably because intensity is a key trigger of exercise-induced BDNF increases. Now, let's take a look at what this latest research reveals. Well, in a 2015 study entitled Dose-Response Relation Between Exercise Duration and Cognition, participants took a cognitive test called a Stroop task, in which they had to identify the color of colored words flashing on the screen. So the word red might flash in red letters, and then later the word red might flash in green letters, and participants had to sort through such confusion. The exercise they performed prior to this task was moderate intensity cycling for 10, 20, or 45 minutes. So it turns out that in this latest study, the best cognitive results were produced with 20 minutes of moderate intensity cycling versus 10 or 45 minutes. The 45-minute session, which was technically 55 minutes if you include the warm-up and the cool-down, actually produced worse results than the group that didn't exercise at all.
So for aerobic cycling, it appears that the sweet spot is about 20 minutes, or 30 if you include the warm-up and the cool-down used in the study. Now, the newest study on exercise in the brain, entitled Impact of Exercise Intensity and Duration on Post-Exercise Executive Function, investigated not only the duration of exercise, but also the intensity of the exercise. So let's take a look at what this one found. In this study, 12 healthy male subjects did a cycling workout at a low intensity, about 30%, for 20 minutes. Then they did a moderate intensity, about 60%, for 20 minutes. They also did a 40-minute low-intensity protocol that was matched for volume with the 20-minute moderate-intensity protocol. And then they actually had a second part of the study in which they took male subjects and did moderate-intensity exercise for 10, 20, or 40 minutes. They used that Stroop test in both parts of the study, before exercise, immediately after exercise, and during the 30-minute post-exercise recovery. Now, for part one of this study, they found that the post-exercise executive function improvement was sustained for a longer period of time after the 20-minute moderate intensity protocol compared to the 40-minute low intensity protocol. It was also sustained for a longer duration of time after the 40-minute lower intensity protocol compared to the 20-minute lower intensity protocol. Now, then, and don't worry, I'll summarize this. For part 2 of the study, the 40-minute moderate intensity won out over the 10-minute and the 20-minute moderate intensity. So, allow me to now summarize. It appears that 20 minutes of moderate intensity at 60% improves executive function, especially compared to 30% intensity at either 20 minutes or at 40 minutes. But it appears that if you have 40 minutes available and you're able to do moderate intensity, that's the best. Just don't creep up close to an hour of moderate intensity exercise, or you start to see a drop in cognitive function. So, ultimately, based on this research, if you want to make yourself smarter for the day, increase BDNF, or increase neuroplasticity, you should include exercise sessions like moderate intensity 20 to 40 minute aerobic sessions, preferably fasted in the morning. And by the way, fasting also increases BDNF. 10 100-meter sprints, trampoline jumping for 10 minutes, any game that includes sprinting or hopping like basketball or tennis. And then finally, you'll get less bang for your buck from weight training or voluminous, moderate intensity aerobic exercise. So that's it. Do you have questions, comments, or feedback about what form of exercise makes you smarter? Well, join the conversation over at facebook.com/getfitguy. And until next time, I'm Ben Greenfield, the Get Fit Guy, asking you, what are you waiting for? Go get fit.